Good morning or good evening or good afternoon, wherever you are watching from the world. We have two guests with us today, Tony and Ming. And we might have a guest that we may not have expected as well. And his name is Pumpkin, their dog. So you might see that in the background. And we hope that, if you have questions about Pumpkin, feel free to. But anyway, joking aside, I've been looking forward to this interview. You might have seen some of the emails that we've talked about in the past if you've joined our email list about how much Paraclete has and mobilization and how much that has helped our missionaries and sent more people out in the field. So today, as we interview, I would like to encourage you to actually ask questions and leave comments. The comments really do encourage our guests, and they encourage me as well. So don't be shy. If you have a question and we've gone on to another subject, we will pivot. We will go back to that question. So we welcome you as part of the conversation. And it's great, even though I can't see where you're watching, where you're coming from. It's great to see all of you, at least in the numbers that have joined us today. Do sound off in the chat and let us know where you're watching from. So welcome, Tony and Ming. I'm glad
Thanks.
you're here. I'm glad Pumpkin is here. So somewhere, I mean, there.
It's being good right now.
You guys missed it. Pumpkin was really cute. He was playing with the ball in the bed. It was adorable. So tell them just briefly a little about yourselves before we get into our questions.
Do you want first? Okay.
Doesn't matter. Go first. Either one.
I'll go first. Yeah, I was born in Long Island, New York, which is about half an hour from here. Raised in an Italian-American family, and became a Christian in high school. So a little bit about that later. We met in Flushing, New York, which people jokingly say it's a good idea, Flushing, New York. But I digress. Yeah, we met, we were married there almost 38 years ago. Our home church, First Baptist Flushing, was kind of a cultural melting or stew, really. People from, at that time, was Russia, China, Korea, India. Flushing has over 210,000 languages. No, 210 languages. You know what I mean.
Yep.
There's not that many languages in the world, but anyway, so it was really reflected in our church. Ming was in the young adult Chinese American fellowship. I was in the young Korea fellowship. I used to be young, believe it or not. And then we met and we got married, and the rest is history. We have two wonderful children. One's in Mexico right now at a film premiere, as a matter of fact. He's showing his film. And
Nice.
Another is in Jersey City working.
Awesome.
All right. You covered everything. But actually, we do live right now in New Jersey. And oftentimes we joke that it's kind of like New Jersey. It's like a suburb of New York. So we both consider ourselves quite as New Yorkers because we had spent so many years there working and living in New York. So our two kids are, of course, grew up partially overseas. They are TCKs and they have that TCK DNA in them. So that's why they're constantly traveling all over the world and just, yeah. They both married, so that's no grandkids yet. So we have Pumpkin, a dog. Maybe he'll make an appearance, and he's 7.
That's awesome. So let's start with let's go a little deeper into your personal lives there. You shared a little bit about it, but let's talk about your testimony. Share how you both became believers and when did your faith become your own?
Sure. When I was a freshman in junior, sophomore, whatever, in high school, my sister became a Christian, and that kind of rocked our family. And I noticed an amazing change in her life. She loved and cared for me. She shared how I can know Jesus in a personal way. And I we sat one day in my living room and prayed that Jesus would come and be my savior.
Hmm. Yeah, for me, I grew up in a Chinese family, obviously. Actually, my family came to the States when I was 10. So I was made in Taiwan. Uh, and I think once we came to the States, a lot of the tradition and culture that kind of came with, my heritage was not as pronounced. My parents didn't have a very, um, what I think, very religious, culturally, yes, but not very religious view of God. We didn't go to the temple. I didn't know who God was. But I think inside me, I always knew that there was a God. There was somebody that was bigger than me. And I wanted that. I think when I was growing up, there was also a lot of identity issues for me, being born in Taiwan, raised in the States, and feeling like, well, who am I? And so that was very attractive to me, just knowing that there is a God who is a God of all cultures. So when I was 16, I went to church with a friend. They just invited, a bunch of people to go to church. Actually, it was in Chinese school. So that these friends of mine, they invited me to church. So I went, and the pastor gave an invitation for salvation message, and then I just I don't know what prompted me. It has to be the Holy Spirit, because again, I did not have any religious education. And I just raised my hand. I said, I want it. I want that God. I wanted to belong to a God who loves me. And that's how I became a Christian. So,
Awesome. Awesome. This is what I like about asking these questions because I get so many different answers and so many different backgrounds. Um, so you're a believer now. And when did missions cross your mind? So share that process with the rest of our audience.
Oh, that's a good question. I remember right after I became a Christian, like almost immediately when I was like, 15 or 16, I remember thinking right off the bat of sharing, the good news of Jesus. And I remember playing contemporary Christian music. They had records back in those days. They do have it now, but the vinyl and teaching from the records. So those were the early days. When I went to college, I was involved with the campus ministry, and I joined a team that went overseas to Asia for the summer. And when I was in the streets of Iligan City in the Philippines walking around, I remember thinking, boy, I'd love to do this full time. And later that trip, they took us to a country in East Asia. And while I was there, I prayed that God would send me back someday.
mm,
So that's how missions kind of became part of my life.
mm.
Awesome.
Yeah, I had some similar experiences. That's actually partially what drew Tony and I together, when we met in church, because of our experience cross culturally. I was also very blessed to have, after receiving Christ at 16, I continued to attend church, through youth group, through just good teaching, good teacher, and then gone on to college. That I was encouraged to be involved with a campus ministry. So I also went on a summer project. Uh, so that brought me to Japan my junior year. And I remember when I was in Japan, we did all kinds of outreach and just kind of build relationship with the students there. And I had one student that came that I was talking to, and she said to me, she said, "We Japanese are not religious, but I like to know more about Jesus Christ."
Mm.
And that just kind of stuck with me. Um, so when I came back, I thought, I really wanted to, um, I really want to devote my life in sharing the gospel with people. And it kind of went along with my interests. I was a psych major. I'm really interested in people, curious about who they are, and I just thought, rather than helping them with a band-aid, what if I had the opportunity to share with them the real healer, the a person that could really make a difference in their life. So that was kind of my journey to missions. So when I graduated from college, I did my first job was with a campus ministry with crew. So I went on staff with them, and so that was the beginning of my mission journey.
That's great. So why WorldVenture? Why did you choose WorldVenture?
Well, our church definitely recognized and approved WorldVenture. The pastors encouraged us to be part of that. And I remember when I was in seminary in Chicago, they would have mission fairs, and these mission reps would try to get us to join with them. But then a mobilizer from CBFMS, World Ventures progenitor, I think that's the word. He recommended, so what's holding you back from joining? And I thought, nothing is holding me back. So they were in Wheaton at that time, and we were in seminary in Chicago. So it was an easy, about an hour ride for us.
Yeah, I have a couple of stories for that. So as Tony mentioned, we were part of the CBA church, our home church. So our pastor actually had a relationship with some overseas missionary with WorldVenture, right?
Mm-hmm.
He actually was invited to speak in one of their annual conferences in Macau. So when he visited Macau, and he said he came back and he said, "Oh, I have the perfect place for you guys. It's half European and half Chinese. You guys will fit right in." And it was Macau. So we thought, "Oh, okay, well, I guess we'll look into Macau." And then on one of the conferences, we're in seminary and near Wheaton, and World Venture used to have these annual conferences in Wheaton, and we had a missionary from Macau that was coming through, and that was Dennis Ahern, and some of you know him. And he came, so he was a house guest. He slept in our sofa bed, took us out to dinner, and he just wherever we went, he just struck up conversations with the waitress and talked about, very appropriately about their life and Jesus. And I remember after that, I said to Tony, I said, "I want to join a team with people like that." So that's kind of like what drew us to World Venture, and then even specifically to Macau.
Yeah, Dennis Ahern is a great person. I so miss seeing him. And so yeah, he's very persuasive.
Without having to be persuasive, you just have to tell stories.
Yeah, exactly. So before you became a mobilizer and part of the Paraclete team, share about your earlier work in Taiwan and Macau. And tell me, we know where Taiwan is, but you may need for our audience to explain a little bit more about where Macau is located. And so
Sure.
go ahead and go into detail. What did you do there? Why those, you explained kind of already why those two areas, but go ahead.
Sure. Now I forgot to share something that a little girl said to us when we were sharing in a church. When Ming said, "Does anybody know where Macau is?" And she said, "Macau is in my barn."
Well, that makes it easier to learn how to pronounce it correctly.
There you go. There you go.
Good.
So Macau, which is not my barn, is located at the end of the Pearl River Delta. Now, if you picture China and you see Guangzhou in southern China, there's the Pearl River that comes down. On one end of the delta, let's say it's my pinky, is Hong Kong. And on the other end of the delta is Macau. Hong Kong was settled by the British and went back to China in 1997. Macau was kind of settled by the Portuguese in 99 and went back to China while we were there in no,
It was settled in the
not settled in
in the
99.
1400s,
So sorry,
1500s.
16th century and went back to China in 99. So that's kind of where. So in Taiwan, let's get Taiwan a little bit. What do we do in Taiwan?
Well, we went to Taiwan for language study, even though our ultimate destination was Macau. And Macau actually is predominantly Portuguese. Sorry, it is Portuguese speaking on one hand. And then a minority of them at the time there was still the government. The government was all Portuguese, but the local people were actually Cantonese, Cantonese speaking. But we learned Mandarin because the people that we work with in Macau, a lot of the people that we work with were actually from China, who did not necessarily speak Cantonese, and Mandarin, of course, is the national language of China. And so we went to Taiwan to learn language. And for Tony, it was, starting from zero. And for me, it was, getting me up to speed and then learning religious language since I was not brought up in a church and I didn't attend a Chinese church when I was in the States. So that was Taiwan.
So then in 96, so we went to Taiwan in 94. And a lot of great experiences there. People were very friendly. Joined a small group with Doug Penny, who is a retired missionary, but they welcomed us and was involved there. First time I preached in Chinese was in Taiwan. A lot of puzzled looks on their faces because what is this guy saying? But in 96, we moved to Macau and we joined the Great Wall Ministry team, which had the motto of helping Chinese reach Chinese for Christ. And we had a street meeting in Macau, a half a mile from the border of China. There were many factories in Macau at that time. If you looked at the label of your shirt, back in the 90s or probably early 2000s, it would say made in China. It was actually made in China and finished in Macau. They were showing labels made in China. But we had outreach to those workers from China in Macau who were working, and they worked 6.5 days a week. Their only break was Sunday nights at 6 p.m. to close. That was it. 7 days a week, really, and that was the only time. So we had services at 9 p.m. on Sunday nights, and we had outreach during the day, not during the day, during the night when they came home. and we'd meet as a team in the morning to pray and talk about how things are going. So that was the early part of our ministry in Macau. I helped pastor a church there, in the close to the border with China, and it was an exciting time. We saw the handover and took the kids to go see all of the gifts that the provinces of China gave to Macau as they welcomed them in. They took pictures with Chinese soldiers. It was kind of a fun time, interesting time in Macau. Ming, do you want to early days in Macau? Anything you want to?
Early days in Macau. Yeah, I think early days in Macau was really just, it was very eye-opening as far as just being, being in touch with people who actually left their homes to work as contract laborers. And so that was something different, when you think about going to a location, you're ministering to people that are in the neighborhood. Well, and these people, for one of the churches that we worked in, they're actually they come from all over China, and they come for obviously work opportunities, and so just learning about like where they're from and what their life was like and what they hope they can accomplish by working in Macau. And of course, when they live in Macau, they live dormitory style. They live 8 to 10 in a room, and they share beds sometimes, and really church for them, though, for those who did come to church, was an oasis. And it was a breath of fresh air from working in a factory, from living in a very crowded environment, to a place where people are interested in you and care about you and share the gospel of hope. So it was just a tremendous opportunity to be there, to see that we can offer that opportunity, extend that opportunity for people to come to know Jesus. And of course, the beauty of it is that once they become believers, they take it back to their provinces, to their home, to their friends, to their relatives. So it was a very it was a privilege. It was a learning season, and also a privilege to be able to be part of that.
Yeah, one such. There's so many stories.
Oh, we like stories here. So
one, I think of two. I'll share two of them. One is that we would visit the workers in the factories at night, and when at once it's time I was in a part of Macau that Macau was very crowded. At one time, it was the most densely populated place on earth, and it was really, so when you're walking down the streets, you would just, it's teeming with people. So I'm visiting a contract labor, and I think I woke him up when it went to his house. It wasn't a very promising meeting, but I shared with him how we can know God personally. And I love thinking, well, I don't know where that went. Anyway, years later, one of our co-workers, who was an amazing lady, she went back to her home city, and while she was there, the person that picked her up was the person that I had shared Christ with, and he was glowing in faith. He was walking with God, and has some difficulties in life, but he was doing well. The other story was a Sunday night meeting in Macau. You know, these went on to like 11 o'clock in there or something. And so with a piano player and a worship leader, it's like 35 of us all singing mostly out of tune. But you know, it was the most meaningful worship service I've ever had, because the songs that we're singing were talking about how painful their life is, but how God's shown in their hearts. I guess I'll remember that my whole life.
Amazing. So, you planted a church in Macau.
Mm-hmm.
So, tell me about a little bit about that church planting, and how is that doing these days?
That's a good question. So in 2001, 2000, we moved to another part of Macau. Macau is a peninsula in two islands. Back then it was only 8.2 square miles. Now it's over 20. That's another story. So when we moved there, when we were finally back in Macau full time, we started planning a church to Mandarin speakers. And myself and Paul Mayhew, who is and was an incredible leader, we went out to find an apartment to hold our Bible study in. And from that very first day that we went for the apartment, I noticed my left leg dragging. And it could have been the heat, the tension. You kind of like words started, but then you move on. Anyway, we continued that Bible study, and finally, Paul mentioned, why don't you just start a worship service? That's how people in Macau will be attracted. I thought, that's a great idea. And we started that worship service, and it was on Easter Sunday in 2001. But by that time, I had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and Macau was very small back then. They really had no neurologists full time. I had to go to Hong Kong, and we took the jet for to Hong Kong. It's kind of like taking an intercity bus, only a lot cooler. The bus goes up in the air and flies on the surface of water.
Wow.
Anyway, I'd go back and forth to Hong Kong. That's where they diagnosed me, and it was really just a matter of time that we had to leave Macau, because there was no real health care there. But at the time, what happened was the missionaries that were there, and especially the Chinese believers, the pastors, the missionaries, the believers, all gathered together to support Songyang Church, or the Great Praise Church. And Bill Ackline came. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Bill Linda. They came, the pastor of the church, along with Jim and Christy, who were also missionaries there. Jan Royce also helped support. Jan went home to be with Jesus shortly after she retired. But a lot of the missionaries from Hong Kong, from neighboring countries came. Joshua and Yami Sin also helped out. And they all supported the church. and now they have celebrated their 24th anniversary this past Easter, and they have called their first Macau-born pastor to lead the church. So we're very, very encouraged by that. 24 years. Uh, uh, how would you know it could survive? But Jesus is building his church worldwide. And he said the gates of hell would not, be an enemy against it. So there you go.
Wow. And we always try to kind of work ourselves out of a job a little bit to try to get these church plants and these ministries to be locally led anyway. So that's amazing that
Yes,
it's now
that's
led
right.
by a Macau-born pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we had a running joke that once we got out of the way, the church continue on. There's a story I like to share about
Sure.
the ministry, specifically in that church and the church plant, is that Tony had an, a Chinese tutor from the
Oh,
beginning
yeah.
when he arrived in Macau. So having gone through 2 years of formal language training, but also continue on with just a one-on-one tutor. And she was an educator from originally from China and settled in Macau, and she had a government job doing some type of teaching. So she did this on the side, and she had good English. She loved hanging out with foreigners, and so she was a good teacher. And I remember, like, when she was a tutor with Tony, we thought about, like, okay, like, this is an opportunity to share Christ with her. And I'm sure we did throughout our time. And then there were others, right? There were other people in the church that connected with the mission. So eventually, after we left to come back to the States, we found out that she had become a believer. And not only that, she was very active in this church plant.
Mm.
And so every year, every so often, we would go back to Macau, and we still see her. We're still in contact with her. And the last time I went, last time we went, which is in
Let's talk.
October, she had shared a story about her mom and dad. Her dad had passed, and her mom, and she showed me this video of her mom um, leading a Bible study. And I said, well, how did this happen? And she says, well, I share Christ with them. And she just said it a very matter of fact. She said, I told my parents, anytime you go somewhere, you have to have a plan. If you're going to go travel, you're planning about where you're going to go, what you're going to take, and you do the same thing with your life. So that's how she presented the gospel to them, and they both respond to the gospel. Her dad has passed on, and her mom now is, like, in China leading a Bible study. And I was
Wow.
just like, wow, I can't believe this. And so I asked her permission. I said, oh, can I share that video? I said, oh, that's just so heartwarming to see this older lady, you
Yeah.
know, who came to Christ at a later time and then share Christ with her friends. But, you know, with this teacher, and now we had the privilege, because we've been around for a while, right? That we can say 24 years ago, we can never imagine this. Now, 24 years later, this is the fruit. So it's quite a joy.
Praise God. Patience and prayer and
Mm.
perseverance, all the top, they all start with P too. But patience, perseverance, I mean, this is in prayer. I mean, and we talked about somebody talked about, I remember, at some point, talked about how prayer lays the road ahead of the work God will do. So
Yes.
somebody somewhere prayed for a church plant there, and you guys were sent. And 24
There you
years
go.
later, Macau led. You got Macau led believers leading in positions, and that is just wonderful. So tell me about. We're going to fast forward now to today.
Mhm.
So what do you do now with WorldVentures?
Okay. Do you want to go first?
Yeah. So, I think God works in mysterious ways, and he works even within our own ignorance. Because I think I'm one of these people who don't, like, I don't consider myself to be very ambitious, but somehow opportunity presents itself. And so I say, like, oh, yeah, okay, I want to do that. So I mentioned to you before that I was a psych major, and that was always been an interest of mine. But prior to going overseas at the time, it just seems more, it, what's the word? It just seemed more practical, to maybe have some theology in my background and then just go overseas. So I didn't have the ambition of, like, well, what can we do about psychology? What can we do about the fact that you're interested in people? And but having been forced to come back to the States because of Tony's MS,
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to go back to school for counseling. And so I went to school. I was telling Tony, I said, I don't remember what I did when I'm in my 40s. Well, I went to school in my 40s. That's what happened, I guess. So I did receive a counseling degree, and then was licensed as a counselor. And my hope and desire was always to come alongside of churches or in mission group. And I remember talking early on with WorldVenture and was like, well, yeah, we really like that, but we don't really have a place. But it took a while, and it was a few years later that again the member care department of WorldVenture actually came for a member care visit to us. They were concerned about how we were doing since coming back to the States. And my boss at the time, Connie Beefus, she says, well, I could sure use some help. But would you be willing to move to Colorado? And so we did. We moved to Colorado, and then I joined Paraclete, which is the member care wing of WorldVenture. So I've been with Paraclete since 2012. When I joined, I was the youngest person there. Now I'm the oldest person in Paraclete. So it's been a privilege. I always share with churches that it's merging two of my loves, my love for mission, my love for seeing people be more whole and be more of who God wants them to be. And I get to do that when I meet with missionaries. So I meet with missionaries one-on-one, usually virtually, obviously, because they're all over the world. And back in the days, I would have to explain that, missionaries are like normal people. They have problems just like you. They have marital problems, they have parental issues. And on top of that, they're doing this cross culturally without family support, without resources. There's just so many things that they have to kind of invent and put in place, and that's minus the crisis that can happen on the field, political, it could be disaster, vicarious trauma. There's all kinds of things that they would face that your normal human being in a regular suburbia neighborhood would not. So they really, really need support and help. I don't need to explain that as more anymore, because since COVID, everybody knows that, we all need help with anxiety, managing, depression. But that's what I do, and I love it, and it's a privilege for me.
Right. So I've been in 2013. I was officially disabled. So meaning that I'm Social Security disabled. But in after that, after a because I'm a little bit distracted, but after that, I kind of beat this the Paraclete director back then. asked me to help in rope holders, which was a ministry that connected missionary vets with missionary newbies. And basically, what they did is the missionary vets helped normalize the experience. Like, I remember being a first term missionary and not being, the street dogs in Taiwan spoke more Mandarin than me, and that's a little bit frustrating for an adult to now all of a sudden be back to being a child again. So we normalize their experiences. I think up to date, we probably have had like 60 missionary vets be involved holding the rope for I don't know what that number would be right now. But it's going to be more robust in the future because we do want to help mentor those missionary vets, not only be a listening ear, but to actually help them grow and to be the person that God has made them to be. So Rope Builders has been part of my life the last 12 years. I've also begun mentoring, coaching a missionary, several missionaries overseas, but more clearly in more of a mentoring role. The more gray hair you get, the more of a mentor you become. So, we've been doing that. I also help with missionary debriefs at in Colorado. So every year, it used to be twice a year. Now it's once a year in July. We get to go back to the beautiful state of Colorado and enjoy debriefing with the missionaries. And also, on the other hand, I'm part of the Emeritus. Emeritus is our for retired missionaries. I'm part of the steering committee, so to speak, and we are recruiting missionary vets there, and also recruiting missionary newbies during the what do they call it now?
Appointees.
No, I know that, but they call it in July. What do they call that big meeting now?
Launch.
Launch, or no, there's a bigger name, but it's okay.
Well, there's launch, and then there's the big one where everyone gathers in July. Yeah.
Summit. Yeah. So at the summit, we get to recruit from both. So I get the best job of both, right? Like with the missionary, that's which our goal, really, the pure goal, and the excitement of the newbies to recruit from them. So I'm very blessed to be with both parts of this missionary journey.
Just want to do a shout out to our friends in Hong Kong and Macau. I didn't realize that they were watching.
Yes, we see your comment. Is that Wei? Why is the first name?
Like Quan.
It's like Brother Quan.
Yeah.
Who is an amazing story because Paul Mayhew asked Brother Quan to be the pastor at Shanghai. And he's been there now for, I don't know, over 20 years. And he's a great brother. Quan Di Shong Ni Ha.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. And Lynn, welcome as well. We're always glad to see your face. So welcome. So let's go on to, we often post our prayer requests based on inspired from workers' newsletters, just a little more vague for privacy's sake.
Sure.
And we post these prayer requests 5 a.m. Arizona time every morning. And in one particular one, it was our Southeast Asia people that had talked about a biblically healthy church.
Mm,
And when we had last interviewed the Ralstons in the Philippines, we had briefly talked about what a biblically healthy church might look like. So, how is your work contributing to this, and what does a biblically healthy church look like in your opinion?
mm. Well, I would say that a biblically healthy church or is developing biblically healthy people. you know,
I
there's
like that.
there's that are connected both in their emotions, their love the Lord God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, and we're growing. Let me tell you, I'm 64. I could tell you how much I need to grow emotionally in my relationship with Christ. But definitely that's the hope, right? Of every disciple, every child of God, that they would know more of God's love, that they would be rooted and grounded in His love, that they would be filled with strength from Him, from God, to be able to be worthy of their calling. So a biblically healthy church is filled with people that are deeply connected to the Lord God or growing in that direction. As my pastor now says, the process of our church is towards holiness, towards goodness. Shout out to Pro Tim. If he's listening, he's a great pastor also.
Awesome. So, Ming, as a paraclete or counselor, how have you seen God at work in your role with WorldVenture?
Sometimes I don't really know, because people come to me when they have things they want to talk about that are unpleasant and that is a stressor, that's an issue. And then I don't always hear from them whether they're doing well. But it's kind of like no news is good news, right? no, there is a beginning and end to counseling relationship. But all that's to say that a lot of the things that we talk about are confidential, so we don't, we're not going to publicize it. I don't, make a practice of saying, oh, well, this person is doing this now and that, and but
Mm-hmm.
I I think my personal reward is actually seeing the growth in them when we do have that counseling relationship, and when I see that they're trying, they're making changes, they're willing, and there is a difference. So what I mean by what I don't know is I don't always see the end, the end result, as in what people would put on in a newsletter, but I see the changes, and sometimes that includes, a lot of hardship, a lot of struggles, a lot of wrestling. And but when people are wrestling, and even if they're doubting, that means that you're growing. So that's been a real good plus for me, which is again hard to publicize, hard to summarize, but um, I really think that it's very helpful that we created a space for people to be able to come to Paraclete and say, I'm not doing well in this area, and I don't need to pretend that I'm okay, and that I have areas of growth, and can you help me with this? So I think that's very important for every missionary, for every believer, and we want to be able to have that, create that space, that safe space for our workers.
That is great. So we shared looking back at your own mission history, what would you tell the younger you now that you've served for many years? What would you tell that new, brand new person coming into the mission field, all dewy-eyed and has all these plans and has now been in the mission field for quite some time in various roles? What would you tell that person now?
Definitely to enjoy the espresso that you're. No, I'm just kidding. But that's
Hey, I'm in
true.
agreement.
They had a great espresso Macau. But I would say I'm thinking about the verse in Proverbs that says to watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flows the springs of life. And really to not only to avoid the egregious, there's obvious sins, but to make sure that you're developing your own heart, developing your own relation. Yeah, that's the other key thing is we were very blessed with a wonderful team and wonderful teammates that engaged us, that would love us, care for us. I would encourage the new missionaries to do that with their teammates and to have grace. Nobody's perfect, and we're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. No team is perfect, but you need each other, right? And McCampbell really needed each other. It was a very small place, blood pressure, so we banded together. Ming?
Yeah. I think of a book that I read a long time ago, and actually I don't quite remember the content, but I remember the title, Long Obedience in the Same Direction, Eugene Peterson. And one of the things I see and the challenges of the current generation that maybe weren't as difficult for us in our generation is that there's so many options these days and things come so instantaneously. Like if there's something you don't know, just ask Google. If you need an answer for somebody, just text them. So growing up in that type of environment, it's really hard to see things come slowly because that's not your norm. And so you can very well think that, oh, if I had this desire, if I had this, if God placed this desire in my heart and I had this passion, then things will come very quickly, or at least quicker than you hope it would be. So again, that being willing to go the long obedience in the same direction and trusting God that he will use you and he will grow you and it will ultimately bring glory to him in his way. It may not be your way, but in his way, and just leaving room for that then to say it has to happen like this and according to my timetable. So that will be what I say. What was your ultimate question? Did I answer
That answered it great. And we are getting close to the end of our time, everyone. So let's talk about, what is your support at right now?
So as a global specialist, my support is used for ministry. But right now I'm studying and doing research in resilience, and the support really has enabled me to do that. A shout out to my supporters. They have been wonderful. I love you guys. Thank you for your prayers. Yeah, so that our support is healthy, and also we use our support to go to Denver to go overseas. Really, we've done the briefs in Europe, Africa, Asia, maybe even South America coming up. I'm not sure. But, and that's where the support is used. So, both for tuition and for travel and any other ministry support. It helps pay off for our cell phone bills and internet. So again, thank you guys. We appreciate it. We all the years that you've supported us, we couldn't do it without you. We love you. Thank you, Red Mills Baptist Church, if you're online today. New York Chinese Baptist Church, all the individual supporters, Josette and Bill. I'm gonna forget people, but thank you all, guys. You guys have been wonderful.
So if you want to become a supporter, you can scan the QR code or go to the link in the chat. Before we end our time, just real quickly, how can people be praying for you both personally and professionally?
Do you want to start?
You go.
Well, definitely professionally, we are transitioning role holders to more of a mentoring role, so you can pray that we will find the mentors that God is raising up. I plan to be a mentor. I'm excited about that role. Um, that's definitely part of it. Coaching, I pray for more people that I can coach. But on top of that, I'm in the middle of finishing this research dissertation that I hope someday will lead to a doctorate, maybe in a couple of years. But so they can pray for that, especially chapter 2. I need you guys to pray for chapter 2.
You heard that. Pray for chapter 2. Dissertations are, I have never gone through one of those things or gone through a PhD that way, but I have heard the stories. So definitely be praying for that, everyone.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just the balance of work and home, and so since January, I assumed the role of clinical coordinator. So I have a little bit more responsibility administratively, and also just thinking ahead strategically, like how can we build Paraclete? Well, at least for me, the clinical part of it, how do we equip and train our people better? What can we do differently? And also to kind of globalize that, with our people in different areas. So just giving me wisdom for that, and the the strength to do that, and balancing with home life, because not only do I take care of our home, but I have a brother that lives nearby, and he's single, and so he doesn't really have he really doesn't have any social support. He has the VA support, but he's a paraplegic. So I often would run to his house at least twice a week just to help him troubleshoot anything, or just provide whatever needs there be. So pray for that I can kind of do all of that and still stay healthy, right? You gotta model health.
Yes,
You gotta
that's the
you gotta
toughest part.
do the talk, right? Yeah.
Yeah, do the talk. That's the toughest
Yes.
part of all that is just do what you always teach. I'm reminded of that sometimes in my own ministry.
Mm. Mm.
So if everyone there, you got the prayer request. Thank you, Ruth. Ruth said, so glad to hear your stories. I still remember your first Thanksgiving in Taiwan with us, along with Jan Royce and Peter and Debbie Dodd.
Mm.
Yes.
And Brother Kwan is going to pray. He's going to pray for you guys. Thank you. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Your comments have been quite encouraging. I loved having you on, Brother Kwan, and all the others. If you are watching this after the live stream is done and you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I will make sure that they get your questions, and so you can get your answers. If you want to private message us your contact information to pass along to them, I'm happy to do that. Just go and just DM us or private message us on another platform, and we'll pass on your message. So thank you everyone for joining us. Ming and Tony, thank you for this. Do stay on. But thank you for sharing those stories, sharing about the church plant, and actually seeing someone from that area join us today with a treat. Thank you. So thank you, everyone. And the next live stream will be June 20th. We will be focusing on the Czech Republic, and you'll be able to hear some stories from there. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks.